are just hours away from the high-stakes vice presidential showdown between J.D. Vance and Tim Walz. But watch out, J.D. Team Walz seems to be laying a trap. They're acting all nervous that the governor will blow it and even taking to the airwaves to lower expectations. Watch this.
I just think we need to lower expectations a little bit because then we can all be pleasantly surprised if I'm wrong and that Tim Walz just mops the floor with him.
Trying to pin him as extreme, out of touch, and all of that. I think that's where he's going to go really, really hard. If it's joyful warrior versus grumpy young guy trying to represent grumpy old guy, I think it would be a win.
And Donald Trump is getting in on the pre-debate fun by taking this shot at Tim Walz. Watch.
You'll see it tomorrow with JD. It'll be stacked. He's going up against a moron, a total moron. How she picked him is unbelievable. And I think it's a big factor. There's something wrong with that guy. He's sick.
Okay. Let me ask you this, Jessica. You've got a guy who was a six-term congressman. He's in his second term as governor. He's run for major office 9 times. Now he's running for vice president. And they really want to lower expectations as though he's not up to this?
Everybody wants to lower expectations for all their candidates. Donald Trump basically won 2016 because we lowered expectations. He showed up and didn't vomit on himself, and everyone was like, oh, this will be fine. And then he got to be president. It's a completely normal practice. Donald Trump calling Tim Walz a moron, and over the weekend he said that Kamala Harris was born mentally challenged or disabled. Joe Biden became that, but Kamala was that way from birth. I'm not a Pollyanna. I can take it, the mean commentary. That does not signify to the American public that you can govern for all Americans or that you're not a little child. So as far as tonight goes, J.D. Vance has already made history. He's the least popular VP candidate that we've ever had going into this. And Tim Walz, I understand, will be pressed about what happened during the summer after George Floyd was murdered. But he has a really good record to defend. He won re-election in 2022 by a bigger margin than he won the first time. Minnesota is the 6th best state in the country to do business. He got a $3.7 billion surplus. He cut taxes for middle-class Minnesotans. He can talk about all of those things. The foreign policy part will definitely be interesting, especially with Israel at the top of the agenda. And I really want him to press J.D. Vance on why he voted against the aid package to Israel. This is not the same thing as having Donald Trump up there who says, give Israel whatever they want. J.D. Vance is an isolationist, someone who's voting against aid to Israel, one of our great allies, as well as to Ukraine.
Dana, some of the articles have characterized Walz as a bit manic, a guy who literally shuts down when he gets most stressed. How's this guy supposed to handle the most difficult job, one of the most difficult in the world, or does he just open the windows and smell the burning rubber?
Well, I think because he in the CNN interview, the one interview he's done, and the CNN interview, he said 700 words total. So I don't think J.D. Vance needs to win a popularity contest, but I do think that he has to continue to introduce himself to America. Tonight's his biggest audience. But same for Tim Walz. Except for people in Minnesota, nobody really knows who he is. So it's not a popularity contest. But Vance's mission basically tonight is he's not going to try to necessarily make people like him. He has to take the fight to the Harris policy agenda and hit some of those things that President Trump didn't hit in his debate so that all the good vibes and the joy can be exposed. One thing that I thought Walz has done that I've never understood is he immediately out of the gate made fun of J.D. Vance for going to Yale and for becoming a venture capitalist. And he said, no one that I've taught has ever done that. As if J.D. Vance was born with a silver spoon in his mouth, which we all read the book. That's obviously not the case. It was a very strange and weird way to attack J.D. Vance. So I'm looking forward to tonight. I do think the other thing that's strange is that I think Walz has a more difficult position tonight because, when I was press secretary, if somebody asked me, what does George Bush think about this? I knew. How did I know? 1, because I probably agreed. 2, I was with him all the time. And 3, he never wavered. He didn't change his position. So I always knew what it was. Imagine you're Tim Walz tonight, and you're thinking, wait, is she for that now or is she against that now? I can't remember. and he could get caught in something that could be very embarrassing.
What do you think about that, Jesse?
I'd like to respond to what Jessica said. They've called Donald Trump a Nazi so many times he got shot.
J.D. Vance also called him a Nazi.
And now you're complaining about being called dumb.
I'm not complaining. I'm saying
I
said I can take it. I said it's not a smart way to try to win an election.
Okay. Well, maybe getting your opponent shot and putting him in jail is not a smart idea either. Tonight is a battle for men, Judge Janine.
Okay.
All right? How sexy is that? They're going to be fighting over us because this is really what it's all about. The Democrats have to stop the bleeding with men, and the Republicans need to run up the score with men. And Walz is going to come out, and he's going to try to act like Tim Allen, but he's really Bernie Sanders. And he's going to have the same exact strategy as Kamala Harris had, which is attack Trump and don't talk about any solutions because he doesn't have any solutions, and just make JD look weird and try to make himself look normal. He cannot make any mistakes. I agree with Dana. Either of them can't make a mistake because this race is so tight. Any ridiculous thing that either one of these guys says about tampons or cats is just going to get blasted out everywhere, and that's all everyone's going to talk about. But he does have a challenge because he has to defend himself, he has to defend Kamala, and he has to defend Joe Biden. J.D. Vance has to do what Trump wasn't fully able to do, which is make Harris and Walz own the Biden legacy. And the mics are hot. So he can just turn to this guy and say, you said Bidenomics was working. How? Or why are we hiring you guys after you're in power now? What, you're supposed to fix the problems you created? That's what he should do. And if he's smart, he should attack the media. And since he's such a great storyteller, I'd like to see him say, this is where we were, this is where we are now, and this is where we're going to take you. That's what he needs to do, and I think he'll be very effective.
You know, Greg, they say that he also has a very short fuse. How does JD tap into that?
I don't know. I think you just talk about the issues, but I agree with Jesse that men don't care about joy. Right? Being gay does not lower the inflation or lower the crime rates. And I use the word gay in its original sense.
Happy.
Yes. Trump's right. The odds are stacked against him. No matter what happens, Walz will be the winner. The only reason Trump was considered the winner against Biden is that the media couldn't spin Joe Biden's collapse. I do believe that Walz will probably come after Vance over the cats and dogs stuff. And I think Vance could easily just parlay that and go, you know, you're right. I'm probably better at stuff like crime, immigration, inflation, drug addiction, issues of war and service. I'll give you the victory on cat rhetoric, okay? But at the very least, my stories came from citizens. They weren't made up. They weren't lies to falsely attribute valor to my past or pad my resume about, you know, going here or going there. And then he just moves from there to immigration, right? Talk about, you know, why is it that all the policies of his party only go in one direction? Illegals in, not out. Sanctuary cities, the asylum laws, the Remain in Mexico. These were all designed to get an end result, which is now we have rapists and murderers by the thousands in the United States. If he tries to fact check that, that's very simple. He will say, but that's an accumulation over decades. And he can obviously say, so you're telling me somebody from the 1980s or 90s is included in that number? It's obviously weighted towards the present when you look at Venezuela's low crime rate right now, and we have Venezuelan gangs. If it were a consistent number, we would know that, but it's not. So we know that they're talking about the relevant time right now. So I think that's, if he just sticks to the specific policies, I think if you're on the fence, and I can't believe anybody's on the fence right now, but if you're on the fence, that's pretty amazing. Get some preparation H. You're probably going to hear like, oh, this is the Democrats are a bunch of extremists and the right is a bunch of the Republicans are extremists. That's not going to wash over you. So you just have to go, what is the consensus between everybody? Low crime, low inflation, a strong border. What more could you want? And you just look at and you go, but the problem with Walz is he's on the wrong side of every one of those. So
all right.
Click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You won't get it anywhere else.